Welcome to Trending in Education. Mike Palmer here. Excited today to have a friend who I worked with for a little while at Kaplan Test Prep. He's now moved on to Udemy, where he's doing some interesting work as the head of engineering and product there. We have Karthik Ganusekaran here. Karthik, welcome to Trending in Education.
Hey, thank you, Mike. Yeah, glad to be on your podcast.
Yeah, and I've seen you've been out on a couple other shows out there in the world, which is fun. It's a fun way to get ideas out into the world, and I frequently learn by having conversations. It frequently helps me solidify what I'm thinking, and hopefully our listeners can come along for the ride. We always like to begin by getting our guests to tell us their origin story, what got you to this point in your professional life. Can you share with us what your hero's tale is to this point?
Yeah, sure. I mean, where do I start? My background is in engineering. Started my career as an engineer. I was this kid who used to, get all these new electronic toys, and then I used to rip them apart and then try putting them together. Most of the time, I just failed. So that's probably how I got my passion towards engineering, which is why I pursued my engineering degree. And right after engineering, went into the energy industry where I was working on automation and all these new technology. One of the good things about the first job that I had as an engineer was I was always working on new technologies. I was not really working on just the old, technologies, just operationalize it, implement it, things like that. I was working for Honeywell on their new building automation systems for the Burj Khalifa, world's tallest building.
Mm,
So, that was kind of exciting. And that's kind of what got me into technology more and more and innovation. That's a passion.
yeah.
So how do we solve new problems? I mean, for example, Burj Khalifa has 169 or 180 floors. Got to build an entirely new elevator system. You're gonna account for the swing of the buildings,
Hmm.
and it has to be really, really fast. Otherwise, you're gonna spend like 45 minutes going to the 181st. So these are all like new problems to solve, and that's kind of what got me excited in the engineering world.
Hmm.
And then what happened was, yeah, I mean, we are building these new technologies, but how do we commercialize them? How do we, build a business upon it? How do we scale these new technologies? That got me into the business side of things. Like, how do we make a business, a new technology? How do we apply them in real world and make people's lives better? Which, motivated me to pursue my MBA. And that's one of the reasons why I pursued my MBA after engineering degree. And business school, I was just being impatient. I just wanted to, get into that real action right away as I was going to school. So, I was advising at the entrepreneurial center at the university and came across, the founders of a mobile tech company, and I joined them as the fourth guy in that company. It was a mobile tech company, one of the first ones to build these mobile apps for test prep education. We
Yep.
scaled the company, raised a good amount of money. We raised like I think 20 to 25 million dollars in that span of 4 years. Scaled the company, and then lot of lessons as part of that startup. Like you make a lot of mistakes, you critical errors that could cost the company. I mean, that was our first venture, so it was a decent success. But of course, it's not all companies are gonna become the scale of a Facebook or a Udemy or all the other big ones. So it was a very good learning experience, my first entrepreneurial experience, and it was a good boat to ride. Was getting the product and innovations there and scale the teams, got some good success, and then exited from my first startup to head the product division at ACT, the online assessment company.
Yeah.
That was it was a very old school company trying to transform itself like many other EdTech organizations because they were too late to all the new technologies. So part of my role was to implement new technologies, things like online assessments, online proctoring,
Hmm.
using AI, ML, make sure assessment ministered with integrity.
Hmm.
So this there's a cool problem to solve. That went on for a few years, and then then moved on to Kaplan to get the product innovation team, which is where I got the opportunity to work with Mike.
Yeah. Yeah.
All the listeners. So that was a good one. At Kaplan, we were trying to solve the problem of online digital key banks. So one of my first initiatives was to how do we leverage now again newer technologies and newer modes of delivering content
Mhm.
to the products. And one of the first things I did was to bring in this 3D companion to medical education. These are like really, really awesome, high quality 3D visualization of your entire human anatomy.
Yeah.
Imagine a mid student learning that along with additional Cuban.
Yeah. This is pre meta. This is not using an Oculus yet, but
Yeah,
this sounds
exactly.
like the
Yeah,
same strand of innovation and applying it to a learning context.
exactly. Yeah. But the VR and Oculus Rift thing was on the product roadmap.
Yeah.
Right. The ultimate vision was to be a continuous edtech product, like the additional Q banks help you get to med school.
Mhm.
And in your third and fourth year, or as you go into fellowship and surgery and all that, the product lives on with you
Yeah.
and to train you in multiple skills. And at one point, we were thinking of, performing surgeries
Sure.
on that 3D model using Microsoft HoloLens.
Yeah.
Uh, and, the professors, getting their reporting on their side and
Mhm.
students learning better, right?
Mhm.
So that was the idea.
Mhm.
That was the ultimate vision. So yeah, I was there in Kaplan for a few years and then moved on to Udemy. Here, working on one of the fastest growing SaaS-based platform in the world, heading the products engineering team specifically for iOS and Android,
Got it.
which is, we are waiting that this is going to be the future because the desktop is where bulk of the learning takes place, but it is high time that gotta be building the same experience on all the other numerous devices that are be getting into the market, right?
Yeah.
So, and iOS, Android, Amazon's platform,
Mhm.
or any other, I think it's going to be quite important to scale the same experience.
Yeah, your learning experience is something you carry with you, and as a consumer, you expect to be able to switch modes based on whichever affordances make the
Yep.
most sense for you in those contexts. And folks may not be fully up to speed with Udemy and its scale and what it's been up to. It's been around for a little while as a platform through which there's a marketplace where you can buy access or gain access to educational products. Can you catch folks up on what Udemy is and a little bit of its background?
Sure, yeah. Udemy has been a startup for a little more than 10 years. We went public just last year in October after 10 years of, functioning as a startup.
And
Uh,
that's when I saw I don't think you technically rang the bell,
yeah,
but you were with the collective who were ringing the bell, so good on you.
exactly.
That's good to have life goals. That's one that I wouldn't mind getting in on at some point.
Yeah, yeah. It was like ringing the bell at NASDAQ. That's
Mhm.
where we went public. But yeah, that was a cool experience. I mean, the company, after functioning as a startup for 10 years and, disrupting the entire tech industry, finally we got the opportunity to go public. It was just good timing on my part, like, join and then public into this. It's kind of like a different time to be like 10 years of as a startup and, just entering into becoming a publicly traded company. This comes with, like they say, all those powers come with a lot of responsibility now. So
Yeah,
we can't be that teenager anymore. So
yeah,
yeah, it's a different ball game altogether. But yeah, what Udemy does. So Udemy is probably one of the only marketplaces in the edtech industry. I mean, there might be a couple of others, but Udemy is by far arguably the largest marketplace for online education. The goal of this platform is that we want to democratize education and make it accessible to all. And that's the goal. We don't want to, it shouldn't be like, people should be spending all those exorbitant amount of money to, gain knowledge in anything. Um, you want to learn something about the Web 3.0 or blockchain or Ethereum cryptocurrencies. You don't necessarily have to, spend an expensive certification verification and go through that. And then you halfway through you realize, okay, this is not for me, but then I can't eject because I've already spent a few $1,000s from my pocket. I better just complete it. So rather Udemy helps in that because in our marketplace, anybody with good knowledge or expertise in something can create the content and sell it to any of the learners.
yeah,
Uh, so it's like all of a sudden, like you can run a course on how to start a podcast,
right.
put it out there, and that course is accessible to the entire globe now.
Yeah.
So that's one of the ways we democratize education.
And I do hear that you are growing, you are wonderful to work with, and you are hiring. So could you give us a quick update on how you're thinking about growth and the types of roles that might be opening up?
Yeah, sure. Udemy is in a rapid growth phase. We are literally looking to double the company at this stage. We are hiring a lot of engineers, product folks, designer, marketing folks across the spectrum. And I would highly recommend guys checking out the website. We are remote friendly and a lot of new opportunities are opening up.
And for the content creators too, which is another trend that we've been looking at a lot more lately, the passion economy, the
Yep.
creator economy, where people are making things and some of those things include courses. And then if they want to make that course available to the universe, Udemy is the type of platform that people use to get that piece together. So there's two sides
Yep.
to your ecosystem. There's actually three sides if you think about the organizations that might also plug into it. But at the end of the day, it's providing a platform that allows the creators to make things that can help the learners learn. And interestingly, to your point, you know, 10 years is a relatively long time as a startup. But then at the same time, we're still in the midst of this massive transformation over the last 2 years, which happens to be coinciding with you going public and also with you being hired in your role. You know, this is all coming together at this like inflection point where the world is changing. Any thoughts on that timing and the impact of the pandemic and how it's making us think about learning and thinking about using platforms like Udemy?
Yeah, when I first got into the EdTech world, which was back in 2012, I've always wondered the EdTech world collectively put together globally is like a $4 trillion market. That's a massive market. And yet, at that time, you think about it, there weren't any of these EdTech unicorns. Probably the biggest company was what, Pearson, like a
Yeah.
$10 to $12 billion valuation, and there was no clear dominant player taking over with that $4 trillion market opportunity. It was highly dispersed, and there wasn't much consolidation. As an engineer, it kind of was a boring industry. There were a lot of problems to be solved, a lot of bureaucracy stopping innovation to kick in, etc. But I think slowly towards just before the pandemic was probably when people started realizing there was a lot of venture capital money pouring in, looking at the opportunity. I mean, we have been launching private space companies and rockets, and then we're still in the classroom with the same 20, 30 students in a classroom with a teacher model of education and not really disrupted much there. So it was probably that caught people's attention. Like, we got to change that, right?
Yeah.
I kind of put this even in the Jetsons. You watch the Jetsons trailer,
Yeah.
it's like futuristic, like all these sky cities and,
Yeah.
and everybody is, in their flying cars.
Yeah.
Everything is futuristic. And then when he drops his son to school, he, drops from that flying car into the tube and gets into the class and then goes back to the same model. There is a blackboard right behind
Yeah.
the teacher, and then there is a desk. And that shows how change averse education, even in our imagination, was.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think those are all kind of culminating just before the pandemic, and like people thought, yeah, I think a lot of money needs to go in because we need to disrupt this. A lot of opportunity to change for the good. But I think it was just timing with the pandemic. Like the pandemic came over and said, okay, all those technologies you guys built just before the pandemic, let's put it to test. Is it really working or not?
Right. Right.
Right. And that kind of accelerated all the new changes. I don't know, a good 5, 10 years of technological changes that, we're like crammed into that last 2 years alone
Yeah.
and putting it to test. But again, now we are seeing some of the results. Many of those new innovations aren't really working and some are working. In terms of aren't really working, it's like, it's always a problem that we can build something that is technologically unique just for being cool or adopting all the new technologies, but is it really making a difference? You as a person, are you really learning something just
Right.
because you went through this mode of education? Is online learning really working? Keep ourselves grounded to the data and listen carefully and make those tweaks to the product, I guess. I think that's the phase we are in. So obviously there's a lot of market opportunities to stop consolidate. I feel like the next few years is going to be a big opportunity for all these new edtech unicorns to consolidate and really figure out what is that formula to scale
Mhm.
rapidly, but at the same time make sure population of the learners are actually learning.
Right,
And
right. It's not always filled of dreams. Sometimes you build it, and if the market doesn't come, there's a point at which you got to let go of what's not working. At the same time, the market itself has been transformed. The way adults, especially, the main focus of Udemy, I assume, is on adult
right,
learners, although I imagine it's probably getting interesting to think about how rising generations are thinking about mobile learning and thinking about augmenting what they might get in a traditional K-12 environment. So I imagine you kind of run the gamut, but the way in which, let's say, adult learners in particular are thinking about the importance of learning, the importance of upskilling. We're in the midst of this great reshuffle, great resignation, great whatever you want to call it. The dynamics of the workforce are changing. The way people are thinking about their careers are changing. The one broader theme that we talk about a lot on the show is, education as a benefit, learning as a benefit, and also hiring learners with the right, attitude and grit to continue to get better, continue to, retool and reskill and upskill. All of those trends around the who of learning, who are you delivering these products to and for? We've all gone through some awakening in the last couple years, and how that changed learner is now ready to engage with online learning, mobile learning, I think is significantly different than it was before. At the same time, we see a lot of backlash. We've called it the great snapback. Steve Jordan's, who's been on the show, has called it the great snapback. There's going to be this tendency to just want to go back to what we were doing before. Any thoughts on the profile of the learners who you're serving? I know you have the product background. I'm sure you're listening to the data, listening to your audience. Any themes emerging? Anything around the pandemic that started to pop?
yeah, so Udemy in general is focused on the adult learners. So the andragogy, language is kind of what we are really focused on in our content.
Right, andragogy as opposed to pedagogy.
The learning centers will be very happy to hear that. So andragogy is all the fundamental, the scaffolding that adult learners need as opposed to pedagogy, which is for younger learners.
Mhm.
But yeah, see, with upskilling and reskilling is the big problem that they're trying to solve for companies and the population in general to look for new opportunities. So if you look at the profiles, we are at a stage where the baby boomer population is almost at the retirement stage, or or has already retired at that age. The Gen X is towards the last, just before their retirement. The millennials are have all got into the workforce and getting into climbing the ladders, and then there is also the Gen Zs entering the workforce market, right? So as we look at this profile, we should look at the kind of technologies that the millennials or the Gen Xs have been facing. Most of them have become outdated. Many of these new engineering skills, like someone learns C and C++ and using them.
Right.
There's something called Swift C on iOS that came up. There is React and Angular 1 to
A
12.
little bit of, JavaScript still was still lingering.
Still linger. Yeah, exactly. And look at the entire architecture, platform architecture, to monolith architecture, to all the microservices architecture with
Right.
all the AWS clouds and GCP clouds, all of them coming with their own unique teams. It's just, it's just evolving.
Mhm.
So in other words, all those population that is already in the workforce, whatever they learned in college or in the early stages of the career are already becoming redundant. So
Yeah.
if they don't learn these newer skills, their skills are going to become outdated. So it's important that they are in tune with what is going on. So you look at what are the opportunities, what are the options? They're not going to go back to school. It's too expensive just to go back for another master's in
Yeah.
parties in your 30s, 40s, 50s. Rather, the best option is to learn as you work.
Mm.
And it's in the best interest of for all of the companies to provide this as a benefit because it's too expensive for companies to rehire
Correct.
for another role. Instead, it's better to groom that person to take on new responsibilities. That's the best option companies got.
Yep.
So that's basically where, companies like Udemy are solving the problem because of the breadth of opportunity. One of the key highlights of the platform is the refresh rate courses. So, for example, Udemy as a platform has about 185,000 courses on the platform today, and it's growing at the rate of like 2,000 courses every month.
Wow.
So you're having all these new courses pop in, all the instructors with their latest new technologies that they want to talk about. So any new technology that opens up, the likelihood of that showing up on Udemy is very, very high.
Hmm.
So companies are obviously attracted to this because some high quality new skill courses is just gonna pop up. When that kind of time to market exists, that is very appealing for companies.
Right. Bill Taylor said, are you learning as fast as the world is changing? Which was always, something I thought about even 20 years ago. And you almost have to build the mindset of staying curious, staying hungry,
Right,
unlearning things that you thought were true, letting go of them.
right.
Same thing with jettisoning old skills. Ideally, there's a little bit of learning transfer so you can take some of the fundamentals, but even sometimes you're entering into a different framework. It's, the structure of scientific revolutions. It's a different paradigm. The one that's really emergent now, you mentioned it earlier, Web 3.0, also blockchain technology, AR and VR. I imagine at Udemy, you can almost see trends emerge based on where the marketplace goes. The content providers begin to create content that's covering some of these new trends. And then, like you mentioned, some things take off and, the invisible hand of the marketplace in some ways can point us to emergent trends around the types of skills and content areas that are heating up. Any impressions on that based on your experience, either looking at the data or just familiarizing yourself with what Udemy is doing?
Yeah. In terms of what are most popular at the moment, it's really also driven by market courses. STEM courses, especially in engineering,
Hmm.
these are like the hot stuff at the moment. That also, the great resignation trend.
Hmm.
It's just incredibly difficult to find good engineers in the country because there's a shortage and there are so many engineering opportunities opening up. So even people with a non-STEM background would like to catch on to the opportunities available,
Yeah.
and so would want to reskill, get some certification in engineering, which is where Udemy is very, very helpful because you can earn those on the certifications quite quickly. You can modularize content, what exactly you need to be the stuff that you need for that particular job,
Hmm.
help with the job market. So we do see a lot of that particular area. Languages is another popular segment there. Yeah, the one thing about Udemy is that you can name a course. It's probably out there.
Yeah.
Uh, because with 185,000 plus courses, I can't even name what exactly. Yeah, there probably a good uncategorized content too. Where things like how to brush your teeth, like
Right. Right.
you literally get something for everything. So
Yeah, 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 exactly. And then the way in which people learn different types of skills might vary as well. So, do you have any data on or positions around the learning science? I know, when we were both at Kaplan, it's something we were both very much focused on. It's like you want to make sure that technology is enabling the learning, is actually solving a problem versus it may not always be the best fit. You don't want to say one size fits all when it comes to learning. Are there any affordances around online learning or any ideas around learning science and product design that you think are important to understand nowadays?
I think so. The learning science and the product design collaboration is a big topic across the EdTech spectrum in general because complete online education is definitely not doing the trick. It's not the one solution. Looking at learners' behavior, it's definitely a combination of a couple of different online education being one. But again, what exactly in online education? Is it just a recording of an instructor, you all the content, you watching a video or reading some course materials? There is definitely a lot more that we can do there. It's like if bringing elements like assessments to evaluate the person when you learn something. We introduced new product types like labs, for example. Labs is basically a space where if you learn how to code, you use the lab platform to write your code and get evaluated in real time using some AI engine that
Hmm.
can probably tell you like yeah, this is where you went wrong. This is probably where you to get some good, real time feedback on how to improve the code. So that's another unique practical space. Boot camps, those are like newer things that we want to explore because it's ultimately it's going to be a combination of all of this. Even with mobile learning, like it's not going to be like completely mobile and learning opportunity to learn a particular thing. Like, it's definitely hard to code on a mobile phone.
Right.
You don't have to code, but if they learn theory,
Hmm.
coding is not going to be conducive to the environment yet. Maybe there is a way to solve for it, but
Right.
that not exist doesn't exist at the moment. So
Yeah.
it's always a combination of these different modalities of delivering content and different content types. AR, VR is nothing like what we did at Kaplan is definitely an example. Like that was definitely popular, like amongst the medical students. Like, but in my mind, it's more about using technology judiciously in all of these, and then try to scale is going to be quite important.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then how about looking ahead and or looking outside of education as a sector? Anything more broadly happening in the world around you that's capturing your imagination these days? And then I think we're shifting into the more future facing part of the conversations. This is when you can put on your VR headset and look into your virtual crystal ball, or at least pretend to do that. But anything happening out in the world around us that you're paying extra attention to, you think our listeners might benefit from noticing? And then I'd love to get a little more of your future casting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely late to create my avatar on Metaverse. I probably gotta do that. I don't want to be left behind.
I've heard it. I've heard it also called the Zuckerverse, which is just a whole nother.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm optimistic about the future of Metaverse. I think that it's probably a much needed thing. I think humans like to, find alternatives to the actual reality because I think we as humans tend to hide from reality in many ways. And Metaverse is kind of like the option, I think.
Mhm.
you know, and the concept of metaverse is not something new. I mean, I remember about more than 20 years ago, there used to be a cartoon called Johnny Quest.
Mhm.
And in Johnny Quest, they do go into this, I forgot what it was called, but kind of the metaverse, the alternate universe, they go in and try to hack the mainframe computer systems because they can't really physically go in. So
Yeah.
that's the one conduit to all of that. So they do all of those steps. I mean, and even Ready Player One, right? The book
Mhm.
that came out also discusses that. I think there is whenever is kind of like the human mind's tendency to escape reality, and so I think it's gonna become big. Whenever with its own, think about the context of currency with cryptocurrencies applicable in the metaverse. Maybe this is where the cryptocurrency will actually get some real application or something.
Yeah.
Um, right. I mean, all transactions happening metaverse and cryptos, bitcoins, or whatever, having your own real estate, the metaverse, and
Right.
that's going to mean something. The NFT artworks for your, as your hobby and stuff like that. I think that's one trend that I'm paying close attention to. Just listening to what the practical applications could be. That's one thing.
Yeah.
In general, the Web 3.0 revolution that's picking up with more ownership over your data, privacy, transparency, deregulation for by the people. That's another interesting trend.
That one in particular is one that I keep coming back to because as a learning podcast, trying to understand trends and where the world is heading, it is interesting to start thinking about the trends around learning records and the idea that just like my public health will be carried, that history, that data will be carried with me as I go to different healthcare providers. If something similar could exist for learners,
Right.
that need connecting with this emerging blockchain technology where, could my learning record
Yeah.
be something I can take with me and it isn't necessarily sitting on a big organization's central server, but instead there's a way for me to carry, and that dovetails also with some of the ideas of credentialing
Right.
and like federating that you actually do have those skills.
Absolutely. There's a concept that I discussed at ACT. It's called the education suitcase. It's kind of like a suitcase with all your records from kindergarten to grade. I think this concept is kind of being piloted or in some shape or form in the Netherlands that's being
Mm,
used.
mhm,
Uh, so you have an online record of all your educational achievements, or how you scored, what you learned, etc. from kindergarten, and as you grow, the digital records become better and better. And there is one to access your educational suitcase. So probably a university would you probably have to give access to the university to unlock and see what your learning has been, what are the things you've achieved, and have a more holistic picture of you,
mhm.
rather than just one single assessment that in high school that might determine what you end up choosing for a major.
Yeah,
So that's the whole concept. And similarly in the workforce too, they open the digital suitcase and then they find out what your learnings are, what your achievements have been, and then make a hire.
yeah,
You know, that was the concept. I feel like we are, as the tech world evolves, I think more and more we are probably getting into that kind of a world where some framework gets built into all these online credentials that people get their high school, assessment scores, their entire K through 12 education record, and paint one big picture of who this person is, rather than just those at a point in time assessments
yeah,
uh, that, that probably doesn't give you the whole picture. So I
yeah.
think when you want to access those kinds of records, I see that there are places like that where blockchains can play an important role
Mhm.
to make sure things are encoded and it's yours and yours alone, and you
Yeah,
choose when to share it with others, and there isn't any data leaks or hacks happening. So I think that is immediately one of those key applications that I can think of.
yeah,
As
yeah, and I could imagine in the VR metaverse, I could then open up my suitcase and it'll have my finger paintings from kindergarten in there. Like it's not beyond the pale. It's time to get innovative and to get creative, and that's where as we're getting closer to conclusion, Karthik, any words of advice or recommendations for folks out there who are trying to chart their professional lives and understand what's new and emerging? We'd like to talk about the future of work. You're someone who's worn several different hats. You've been able to navigate to really interesting position that you're in now. Any advice to our listeners as far as, recommendations around staying out ahead of where the world of work and the world of education are heading?
My advice would be continuous learning is just here to stay. I think that is the one thing that's probably going to help us be successful as the years pass by. I think learning doesn't have to be just in one domain. Like, yeah, I want to be an engineer. I'm just only going to learn about engineering, or I'm in products and learn about products. I think an eclectic mix of learning is going to be quite important too, both for our own sanity and also kind of connecting the dots across different areas. Most creative things come out when we have that eclectic mix and we can connect two different areas. How, origami, arts, and technology, engineering and technology, when they combine, that's how they were able to solve for the problem of unfolding satellites
Right.
in space. It's origami inspired folding techniques,
Mhm.
engineering. Then, happens. It's the applications can be endless when we have that eclectic mix of learning, and but at the same time, continuously keep learning new things, all of these domains.
Yeah, I've heard it talk about like the T-shaped learner. There's some areas where you can go deep, for
Right.
and if those are engineering or digitally enabled or ahead of the curve in terms of the marketplace, the job marketplace. But then you also want to be able to play across. That's where you think more about the durables. I no longer call them soft skills; they're now being called more durable skills, where communication, creativity, collaborative skills. And you're a great example of that, where like you had the engineering background, but then you broaden that with the MBA, and then you've been able to apply that to different domains. And I imagine in some ways, even going back to your earlier days as an engineer, you're able to apply those learnings to the different contexts you've been in. So it's not like you really fully let go of the previous context along the way.
Once an engineer, always an engineer. Where you keep thinking that even today I do manage the engineering. I don't get into the details of what exactly the code written or anything, but I think the overall architecture that can help us succeed or from product perspective, kind of keeping things in reality, but at the same time giving the engineers a vision, a product vision of how inspiring the future could be
Yeah.
and driving them. I think that is something that engineers tend to inspire and get inspired by.
Absolutely. Karthik Ganusekaran, head of product and engineering at Udemy. Karthik, really enjoyed having you on the show. Any concluding absolute final thoughts?
Like I said, enjoy your learning, but make sure you always have fun.
Awesome. Fantastic stuff. Thank you very much for joining us on Trending in Education. Hopefully, our listeners got as much out of this conversation as I did. If folks want to check out Udemy, it's Udemy. The website is udemy.com. It's also now available on NASDAQ for those who are curious. It's interesting insight also into the world of EdTech and where platform as a service and software as a service is heading in the world of education. Really appreciate having you on the show.
Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you for the opportunity.
And for our listeners, if you like what you're hearing, write us a review, share the good word. We'll be back again soon. This is Trending in Education.